Have you ever had the feeling that a horse knew what you were about to do before you did it? Not after you moved. Not after you touched the reins. Before. You think about stepping closer, and the horse lifts its head. You decide to turn away. And it shifts position. You feel nervous. And somehow the horse becomes different too. People describe moments like this in strange ways. They say the horse sensed their thoughts, read their emotions, felt their energy, and for a second, it almost seems impossible to explain any other way. Because it doesn't feel like normal observation, it feels immediate. As if the horse reacted to something that hadn't happened yet. But what if something actually had happened? Just not where you expected. Most people imagine decisions appearing suddenly inside the mind. One moment, nothing. The next moment, action. But the body doesn't work like that. Before you consciously decide to move, tiny changes are already happening. Breathing shifts, muscles prepare, your eyes focus. Your posture changes, even your balance begins adjusting. Not enough for another person to notice. But horses were never built to survive by ignoring small changes for thousands of years. Their lives depended on detecting intention early. Not movement, intention. Because in the wild, waiting until something moves can already be too late. A slight change in attention, a small redistribution of weight, a fraction of tension in another animal, those signals matter. And horses became incredibly efficient at reading them. That's why people sometimes feel something strange around horses. You realize they react to things you didn't even know you were showing, and suddenly, it feels like they access something private. Your thoughts, your emotions, your next action. But maybe they're not reading your mind. Maybe they're reading the moment your body starts becoming the decision. And once you notice that, your relationship with horses starts feeling very different. Because now another question appears. If horses notice intentions before actions, what else are they noticing that humans completely miss? Once people realize this, they usually make the same mistake. They start trying to hide. They control their posture, relax their shoulders, force calm breathing, move more carefully, but horses often react anyway. And that creates the illusion all over again, because now it feels impossible. You hid the signal, so how did the horse still notice? The answer may be uncomfortable, because most of what your body communicates is not under conscious control. You don't decide every breath. You don't consciously manage every tiny muscle. You don't choose where your eyes rest for a fraction of a second. And horses seem unusually sensitive to these patterns. That's why experienced riders sometimes say something strange. The horse changed. Right after they changed internally. Not externally, internally. The horse became calmer. Or more hesitant. Or suddenly more willing to approach. Not because of commands, but because something became more predictable. Think about how humans usually communicate. We depend heavily on words, explanations, social rules. We can override what we feel, pretend, mask discomfort, act confident. Horses don't seem interested in that layer. They respond earlier to consistency, to timing, to whether the body and intention match. And when they don't, the horse sometimes hesitates. Not because it judges you, but because mixed signals are difficult to interpret. You move forward, but part of you pulls back. You stay still, but your attention already left. You act calm, but tension remains somewhere underneath. A horse may not understand the story, but it may notice the contradiction. And maybe that's why people describe horses in such emotional terms. Not because horses reveal hidden truths, but because they sometimes expose things we haven't noticed ourselves. You thought you were relaxed. You weren't. You thought you were present. You weren't. You thought you had decided. Your body hadn't yet. And little by little, being around horses can create a strange experience. You stop trying to control them and start paying attention to yourself. Because if they're responding to signals that appear before action, then maybe your body has been speaking long before your mind catches up. This is where the experience becomes difficult to explain, because after enough time around horses, some people stop saying, "My horse understands me," and start saying something else. "My horse makes me notice myself." That sounds subtle, but it changes everything. Because if a horse reacts to patterns you normally ignore, then every interaction becomes a kind of mirror. Not a mirror that shows your appearance, a mirror that shows timing, attention, presence. You begin noticing things that never seemed important before. How quickly you rush. How often your mind leaves before your body does. How your breathing changes when you expect something. How your movements become smaller when you're uncertain. And suddenly, the horse doesn't seem mysterious anymore. But somehow, the experience becomes even stranger. Because now you realize the horse was never predicting you. It was responding to signals that arrived earlier than your awareness. Signals you were producing without realizing it. Maybe that's why people describe horses as grounding. Not because they force calm, but because they make inconsistency harder to ignore. Around most people, you can stay distracted, disconnected, half somewhere else. The interaction continues around a horse. That disconnect sometimes becomes visible, and once you notice it, you start changing without trying. Your movements become clearer, your attention becomes simpler. Your body and intention start arriving at the same place. Not because the horse trained you, but because the horse kept responding honestly. No explanation, no judgment, no interpretation, just reaction. And maybe that's the feeling people struggle to describe. Not that horses read minds, but that they notice the beginning of things, the moment before movement, the second before action, the part of you that appears before words. And once you experience that, it becomes difficult to forget. Because next time a horse reacts before you move, you may ask yourself something unusual. Did the horse know? Or did my body already know first? Thank you for watching Animal Mindset. If you've ever had a moment with a horse that felt impossible to explain, leave it in the comments. And if this changed the way you think about animals, subscribe and stay with us for the next video.